Very good evening. You're watching Play It Speak. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Trade, tariffs, technology and tough talk summarize the meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President Donald Trump in the White House. Prime Minister Modi coined the word MIGA after MAGA, and he vowed to make India great again. The two leaders, in fact, addressed several key topics as well that included tariffs, the extradition of 2611 attack accused Tahavu Rana, illegal immigration, and even the Russia-Ukraine war. And just hours before the two world leaders even met in the White House, the US President, in fact, announced sweeping reciprocal tariffs hitting both allies and competitors in a dramatic escalation of an international trade war that economists warn could fuel inflation at home. However, both the leaders have agreed to settle the negotiation talks on trade in the upcoming few months. Getting United States President Mr. Donald Trump to respect India's strategic interests and spare New Delhi from the wrath of his tariffs and deportation plans will certainly not be easy. But Mr. Modi's friendship with the US President has been a trump card for us to navigate the chaos that's been unleashed by the US President so far. But now that bonhomie is on trial, Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi both relish their image as strong men leading their nations. But one of them will need to blink. Who will that be? We'll deep dive, but the meeting between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi has also highlighted several key agreements aimed at strengthening the US-India relationship. And so first, we focus on trade, tariffs and the defense boost to India-US ties. Let's take you through these key takeaways. India and US are all set to expand their trade and investment. Both leaders have set an ambitious target to boost bilateral trade to $500 billion, this by the year 2030. It's going to signal a strong commitment to enhancing commercial ties, and the first tranche of a bilateral trade deal is expected, in fact, to be completed by fall of 2025. President Donald Trump has announced the US would implement reciprocal tariffs against India, a move reflecting a more assertive stance on trade imbalances, while Prime Minister Modi has aligned with Donald Trump's rhetoric, stating that he too follows a nation-first policy, reinforcing his stance of prioritizing India's interests in these negotiations. Amid the announcements of reciprocal tariffs and criticism of India for charging some of the highest trade tariffs in the world, US President Donald Trump has praised Prime Minister Modi's negotiating skills. In a big boost to defense ties, the US and India have agreed to deepen their defense cooperation as well, emphasizing a strategic partnership. This includes agreements on various defense technologies and equipment as well. Now, the United States will also increase military sales to India. Both nations have agreed to sign a new 10-year defense framework. This long-term agreement would focus on joint military exercises, technology sharing, even deeper military-to-military cooperation. The US has levied reciprocal tariffs against India largely due to trade imbalances, and the significant differential, in fact, deficit amount in tariffs has been imposed by both countries on various goods. The idea behind reciprocal tariffs is that the US would impose tariffs on Indian products in response to India's high tariffs on US imports, thereby encouraging India to reduce its tariffs in order to create a more balanced trading relationship. But what contributed to this decision? Let's take you to some detailed points on these key products and their corresponding tariffs. India has imposed a high tariff of 74.5% on beverages and tobacco, which makes US exports of these products more expensive in the Indian market. The US has retaliated by imposing reciprocal tariffs of 17.5%, as you can see over there, to push India to reduce its tariffs on these goods. The significant disparity in oilseed, fat or even oil tariffs is another point of contention. If you can see, the tariff being imposed by India is 60.1%. The tariff by the United States, of course, is in fact 7.5%. 5.3% is in fact the differential amount. India has imposed significantly higher tariffs of 32.5% on meat and live animal products, which hampers US exports of these goods of India. In response, as you can see, the United States has imposed 2.1 10% reciprocal tariffs to level the playing field for US exporters. As far as leather is concerned, India's 15.1% tariff on leather products is significantly higher than the 4% tariff the US has imposed on Indian leather imports. Textiles are another key area of trade where India has relatively high tariffs compared to the United States. This, of course, has created a barrier for US textile exports, prompting the US to retaliate with its own tariffs on Indian textiles. And so, as part of the strengthening of US-India defense relations, both countries have also agreed to significant defense procurements to enhance India's military capabilities. And before we tell you about the key defense items which are going to be procured, what should be noted is that India has decided to in fact address the issue of trade deficit. Now, coming on to these key defense procurements, starting with Javelin, the anti-tank weapon system. Javelin system is incredibly versatile. It's capable of being operated by a single soldier on foot or mounted on a vehicle, offering maximum flexibility in deployment, this across various terrains and even combat environments. Its fire and forget capability means once it's launched, the missile guides itself to the target, allowing the operator to immediately reposition for safety or to engage in a new target. The Javelin is effective against a wide range of targets, from heavily armored tanks to structures such as bunkers, caves, and other fortified positions. The launch signature of the Javelin is intentionally designed to be minimal, significantly reducing the likelihood of the operator being detected after firing. The Javelin provides a broad operational range from close combat scenarios at 65 meters up to 4,000 meters. It operates effectively in all weather conditions, ensuring reliable performance in adverse environments as well. Now, one of the Javelin's most powerful features is its top attack mode, which guides the missile to strike the top of the target where armor is usually thinner. In direct attack mode, it is capable of hitting fortifications such as caves, bunkers, and other protected targets. The second one is the Striker infantry combat vehicle. The Striker has a long operational range of approximately 483 kilometers with a top speed of 100 kilometers per hour. It is equipped with a 30 mm cannon. It can also be fitted with a 105 mm mobile gun, and so that's how versatile the Striker becomes. It operates with a 2-person crew. It has the capacity to carry a 9-man infantry squad. The Striker is designed for easy air transport, which is capable of being deployed via C-130 aircraft. It provides protection against 14.5 mm projectiles that ensures the safety not just of the crew and infantry, it also carries itself in hostile environments and terrains as well. It is engineered for self-deployment and self-recovery too. It is capable of breaching bunkers, walls, and other fortified structures. Now, the third purchase is going to be the P-81 Poseidon, a cutting-edge maritime patrol aircraft which has been developed by Boeing and specially modified for the Indian Navy. The length is 39.47 meters. Its long fuselage provides the necessary space to accommodate sophisticated radar, sensors, and weapon systems. Its height of 12.83 meters allows for an optimal configuration of systems for maritime surveillance and even mission versatility. It can achieve a high speed of 789 kilometers per hour. The P-81 Poseidon can operate at high altitudes as well and has an impressive range of over 2,200 kilometers and can spend up to 4 hours stationed over critical areas. It is operated by a crew of 9 members. The P-81 is equipped with advanced sensors and weapon systems as well. It can conduct anti-submarine warfare, anti-surface warfare, and intelligence maritime patrol and reconnaissance. And so, as far as Prime Minister Modi's US's visit is concerned, the MAGA plus MIGA mantra. Is this going to chart the new India-US partnership for a Viksit Bharat? We'll be posing that question to our guests in just a bit.
जब अमेरिका और भारत साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं यानी मागा मागा प्लस मीगा तब बन जाता है मेगा पार्टनरशिप फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी।
On trade, I have decided for purposes of fairness that I will charge a reciprocal tariff, meaning whatever countries charge the United States of America, we will charge them, no more, no less.
Would you call the joint declaration a mega partnership between India and the United States, as has been hailed by Prime Minister Modi as well?
Yes, I think it's a very broad-based partnership, which is strategic, but also extends to the sphere of defense, security, economy, technology, and people to people as well. So it's a very broad-based relationship, and perhaps, the most significant relationship as far as India is concerned.
Ambassador, India and the United States are all set to double bilateral trade in 5 years. Critics of the India-UK FTA fear that our multi-sectoral agreement expected by fall of 2025 could also meet a similar fate of uncertainty. How would you speak to such fears?
Well, I think that, both sides have indicated their willingness to negotiate. Now, the devil lies in the details, because each side will try to get a bargain which they feel is fair to them. And in that process, the negotiations can take long, because there are interests which gain and there are interests which get adversely affected whenever you sign a trade agreement. And at the end of the day, each side wants to see that there's a balance of gain and disadvantage in any agreement that is being signed. And so that takes time, as I said, to cross the I's and dot the T's. But both have at least indicated their willingness to discuss these issues within a time-bound framework.
Ambassador, do you think that this visit of Prime Minister Modi to the White House was perhaps one of the biggest acid tests of Indian diplomacy? And how, in your opinion, has Indian Prime Minister and the entire Indian delegation navigated that challenge of tariffs?
Well, I think it's still down the road, if I may say so, because everything still has to be negotiated. The decision is basically to negotiate. So in a sense, the can has been kicked down the road. And what emerges from that, we have to wait and see. Secondly, I think this $500 billion target for two-way trade was first set when President Obama had visited India as the chief guest for Republic Day. We were targeting $500 billion trade at that time. So I think growth has not been as fast as we had expected it to be, even though it's been robust, with two-way trade in goods and services now touching nearly $200 billion, but still far from $500 billion. I think if we can achieve that target by 2030, it'll be very good for both the countries. I think when it was first set, it was perhaps an unrealistic target.
It's interesting, Ambassador, that you talk about the need for acceleration when it comes to this bilateral relationship. For the first time, India's defense partnership with the United States has managed to get the US defense industry to work with India on sensitive technologies that also includes co-production and co-development of various sensitive technologies like the UDA. We also know that the India-US defense deal is expected to also expedite our procurement of the F-35 fighter jet acquisition, which still is in a proposal stage. But how do you see this movement in terms of our defense partnership?
I think that there are plenty of opportunities for a good defense partnership between India and the US. We have bought or placed orders, which are in the pipeline, for about $20 billion worth of defense equipment from the US. But as India seeks to upgrade its capabilities, and the US has the best technology in the world, particularly in the defense sector, then there are opportunities. I think this time they've talked of, India ordering perhaps more maritime surveillance aircraft, which we have already ordered, but perhaps orders for some more, for Javelin missiles, anti-tank missiles, and for the Striker, carriers. I think these were the areas which we've expressed interest.
Let me also come to the counter-terrorism efforts which both the countries are making. All right, I'm so sorry. I think we lost your broadcast there for a moment. But many are calling the counter-terrorism efforts as India-US joint surgical strike on counter-terrorism, as now the United States has agreed to extradite the 2611 mastermind Tariffs Rana. How do you contrast the approach of the Trump administration versus the Biden administration, especially on the issue of terrorism? And also, does that now pave the way for India to hope to address the Khalistan menace, at least the aspect that's emanating from US soil?
I think as far as Tariffs Rana is concerned, that decision had already been taken during the Biden administration, and Tariffs Rana had gone all the way to the court. The Supreme Court, the highest court, had finally dismissed his petition. So the road was clear to extradition. We needed to get a confirmed decision from the new administration because, you cannot take it for granted that an old decision continues. And it's good that Trump has announced the decision to extradite Mr. Rana.
All right, let me introduce our guests now. I'm joined in by Tara Kartha, who's a former director at the NSCS, P.K. Basu, who's a senior economist, Mr. Bob McKeown, who's a former Republican congressman. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, and Tara for joining in. Tara, I want to bring you in on the deal. First of all, when we talk about this newly forged partnership between India and the United States, what's been your assessment? Critics have, in fact, as far as trade is concerned, have also shared fears that perhaps it could still meet the same fate as has the India-United Kingdom FTA. There's been a lot of difficulty as far as that FTA is concerned. Do you think we'll be able to navigate this FTA or perhaps a multi-sectoral agreement as India is calling it?
See, trade is obviously not my area of expertise, but I'll tell you something. This team, which is our ambassador in Washington, the NSA, who's here, and the Jaishankar. Jaishankar has got decades of experience, in this area. You have a person who has continuity. This whole team, and particularly Jaishankar, he knows, he's been dealing with these issues for years. I think that has been your biggest strength. Sorry, I'm just poaching on the question you asked the earlier speaker, right?
No, I asked you, and I'm going to take it forward with Mr. Basu.
Yeah, so there it is. And in terms of also, see, in the economic trade sphere, I just heard the issue of energy, increased LNG purchases from the US. That is, see, they are already the second largest. So the US was already the second largest LNG supplier to us. It's just that it's going to overtake Qatar.
You know, Tara, why I asked you that question also, because this is not the first time that India was posed with the threat of tariffs. Remember, this is the second time we are dealing with the Donald Trump presidency, and there was a similar threat in Trump 1.0 as well. So what do you think is going to be different this time around, and what can be the opportunity? Because we are told that the first time around, the tariffs were posing a threat, and nothing in fact came out of the deal that was being worked upon during that presidency.
No, in that case, we also, in 2018, we also imposed tariffs. I mean, we reciprocated with a bunch of stuff. So, but this time, the point I'm trying to make is, and I would like the gentleman, the economist, take this forward. But in the LNG deal, that's what I'm trying to say, is that you are actually gaining, because your LNG requirements are going to go up by 60% by 2030. So you are actually securing the LNG rise and early at this point of time. This is a big thing for us, you know. In terms of trade, what I was told again is that what we'd asked the specialists in the officials, they say there's very little reciprocal trade. These are reciprocal tariffs. So if you import A and you have X amount of tariffs, then they import also A, then the same amount of tariff applies.
Right.
That is not the case here.
I'm going to bring in PK Basu on that note. Mr. Basu, how do you weigh in? Many have in fact said that this could also open greater avenues to forge a better bilateral trade relationship with Washington. Having said that, look at the way we are navigating the threat of tariffs compared to, say, Canada, Mexico, China. All the three countries have in fact vowed to slap retaliatory tariffs as well. But India has not. Will that give us some kind of leeway now?
Well, I think it's important to understand that the high tariffs that you've quoted, for instance, on vegetable oils, India is not an exporter of vegetable oils. It's very, India's exports of oil meals, etc., are very small. And not much of that goes to the US anyway. So what will happen with that is that if India cuts the tariff substantially, then perhaps some US soy oil imports will come into India, quite a bit more, and they will replace palm oil from Malaysia and Indonesia. Currently, we get a lot of our vegetable oil from Southeast Asia, and it is bilateral deals. We could see an increase in U.S. imports of those things from the U.S. Now, with regard to trade, really what has been agreed today is that India and the U.S. will try and overcome the reciprocity in tariff hikes over the next 6 months. So by September, by the fall, September, October, there should be some sort of deal sorted out whereby India allows in perhaps things like a lot more defense equipment, which is actually to India's benefit too, because it's high technology. The F-35 is a stealth aircraft that is at the cutting edge. So if India really has access to that, I think it'll be to India's benefit. Now,
Mr. Basu, how do you weigh in on the comparisons that are being drawn as far as hurdles in the India-UK FTA is concerned? Do you even think that's a fair comparison?
Okay, I mean, I think there are different hurdles in agreements with different countries. But I think what the US under Trump may be making a mistake about is simply focusing on tariffs. Because the major, if you look at the size of the US bilateral deficit with China, it is 10 times the size of its deficit with India. And the deficit with China exists primarily because China has non-tariff barriers. It doesn't have tariff barriers. Tariff barriers are high, but it has even bigger non-tariff barriers, which is an impediment to India's trade with China as well. So really what we should be whispering in the US ear, and Trump's ear in particular, is that please don't just focus on tariffs. Non-tariff barriers are equally important. Now, with regard to the sorts of tariffs that you cited on meat, for instance, India is not going to import massive amounts of beef, for instance, from the United States. The United States is a big beef exporter. India is not going to import too much of that anyway. So the point is that we could cut those tariffs. It's not going to hurt our industry a whole lot. But if the US is going to impose a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, we are the world's second biggest producer of those two things. And so we would like to do something reciprocal on that front as well. So I think there is a lot to be negotiated here. I think India's position is relatively strong, and the US is a friend. There's no doubt that the India-US relationship is more positive under Trump than it would have been under Biden. And so going forward, I think we will be able to negotiate in good faith and come up with a mutually acceptable trade.
All right. Bob, I want to bring you in on, first of all, our Indian Prime Minister going all the way to the White House. How do you see this trip fructifying? Do you think that it has been a success, or are you still skeptical in terms of what's going to come our way, given that many talk about Donald Trump's unpredictable ways and how he is an extremely unpredictable president? Do you think India needs to be wary of that unpredictability factor?
Well, yes, thank you. And as for unpredictability, that means more or less that he's a decision maker. He's a businessman that looks at the products and makes a conclusion, whereas diplomats love to take 8 or 10 or 15 years to almost begin to start to do something. And so when he moves at a businessman's level, the diplomats get all frustrated about how rapidly he does that. But let me just say that the ambassador that laid out the situation, that was a beautiful explanation of our relationship. I couldn't agree more. And as the economist just mentioned, our relationship is friends. I mean, it's very, very friendly. As you know, the vice president's wife is Indian. One of my best friends, who is now a candidate for governor of the 7th largest state in America, met with the prime minister yesterday, Ramaswamy. Our nation is filled with the close relationship of Indian Americans and the relationship that we have. Let me just say this as a politician. A politician will always do what is in his or her best interest. You just have to understand that. And when America does not assert itself and a country gets pressure from China or other places, they will naturally try to solve that problem. And America now for 40-some years has constantly succumbed and taken the back row and been mistreated and when the country was in need, we'd finance and help and cover and defense and all the rest. But then in the United Nations or in bilateral agreements, if our friends could make a better deal somewhere, they would often do it to the detriment of the United States, and we would just suck it up. And we're the big boy, and we got to put up with it. And that's kind of gone on for some time until the World War II generation is now passed. There's a new generation of Americans that say, why is that? Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be treated fairly? And so that's where we are at the moment.
I want to quickly take closing thoughts from Mr. Basu before he leaves the discussion. Mr. Basu, what do you think could be the win-win of this deal? You know, many were very skeptical initially by the posturing of the US president. He looked very transactional, but towards the end, when the press conference was being addressed, the US president, in fact, said that he has a wonderful relationship. He even missed the prime minister, and that he's looking to do more business with India. What do you think could be the key sticking points for the two economies?
I don't think there are too many sticking points. I'd agree with the ex-Congressman McEwen that there is a lot to come in the form of a positive sum arrangement between the United States and India, because we have fairly complementary economies. If you look at oil and gas, India needs to import a lot of oil and gas, but India is also a significant exporter of refined petroleum. We are the world's 4th largest refiner of petroleum products, and a lot of that goes to the United States. So we will import oil and natural gas. A lot of it will go for domestic use, but some of it will be processed, refined in India, and exported back to the United States more cheaply than can be done by US refineries.
Perhaps that's the kind of formula they're trying to crack right now. As far as reciprocal tariffs are concerned, perhaps India can negotiate by opening up its market access and vice versa. I'm going to, in fact, slip into a quick break. Bob and Tara will continue to stay with us. But remember, this is a big move as US President Donald Trump has confirmed the immediate extradition of the 26/11 attack accused Tahavur Rana to India. But Pakistan is now playing the victim card. Is Tahavur Rana's extradition another surgical strike on Pakistan? We'll bring you the details on the other side.